As far as Minecraft generated structures go, the end city is particularly unique, and despite people complaining that it's ugly, I actually think it's got an odd beauty about it. Today, we transformed it into this. It's a fantasy-looking, complex build that has all of its origins back in that original vanilla end city. And how we did it was pretty interesting. And now I don't expect many of you to attempt this transformation. It is particularly difficult, and we used a lot of building tools such as World Edit. However, let's go through the process of doing it. The first thing that we did was transform each of these different structures one by one. So we started off at the very bottom and worked systematically. The main thing that we're doing is improving the details and adding a little bit more shape. You can obviously tell that we added a very large archway because we wanted a big dominating door for something as impressive as a transformed end city. So you can see that most of the original structure is being maintained. Now, I don't know who designed these things, right? But this structure here has a 2-block center. Those of you that build frequently know that we usually have either 2-block center or a 1-block. 1 block is a lot easier to work with. This is a 2-block center. As you can see, we got this structure going from the middle and it arches out to the sides. The towers on the top are 1-block center, meaning that they will never sit in the middle of this block. You can see that there's 4 blocks in the middle, and the tower has a 1-block center, so it's never ever going to sit perfectly on there. And because of this, I didn't change the tower at all. I wanted to keep that mistake or indiscrepancy throughout this build, so the towers will sit quite oddly on top of these fresh domes that we're adding on top of the big housing units. I don't even know what you want to call them. They're more like upside down temples. So we added a sphere and we decorated them, linking in some purple over the top. We also wanted to keep the main palette of the end city. The only blocks that we added were the purple concrete powder and a bit of wool and the odd bit of sandstone. We wanted to keep this domination of the purple block and the end brick. I actually think it's a pretty good looking block if it's used in the right situation. Obviously the end city, being this fluorescent purple that it is, looks kind of odd. For the tower, we decided to mix in some more end brick because, as you can see in the background, the main body of it was just pure purple, and we wanted to sort of lighten that up a bit. It did look very, very harsh on the purple. So we did a bit of detailing. We added some end rods for some light, a bit of windows to make it look a bit more livable, a bit more like it's an actual city, and we worked on the roof, which is the hardest bit of this entire build if you ask me. So the towers have a very distinct one. It's kind of like a Russian Kremlin style Tsar type roof where it sort of bulges out and then gets really thin towards the top. It's almost like Agrabah from Aladdin. You kind of get the idea. It's like a teardrop shape. I don't know how else to describe it. It's quite difficult to make because that it goes out and then back in again and becomes very, very thin. So if you take a look at that main structure that we've just done, the tower and the bottom bit, that is the majority of this build. We just need to copy those onto the other ones and replace them and then attach them using bridges. Now the bridges posed quite a problem because they're not in line with anything. They had to be made diagonal, so for the time being we just got rid of them. We actually need to paste in what we already made and replace what's floating in the air. Now obviously we don't want the doorway to just sit on nothing, and instead of adding a island underneath, which was one of our ideas, we decided to extend it even further to make it almost look like an ice cream cone. So essentially we'd just make more and more segments, getting smaller and smaller and smaller all the way until there was just 4 blocks left, and we continued adding exactly the same shape, palette and details all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to of course light it up again with some more end rods. Lighting up this build is pretty difficult, but the end rods work very, very well, as this is obviously where they naturally occur. So as you can see, it looks a lot like a floating ice cream cone, and there isn't anything it's like floating on. It's not really explained. There's no jets there or anything like that, and it just seems to work. In this odd end scenario, it sits very nicely. So for the bridges, like I said earlier, it is diagonal, which is a bit of a pain for us builders if you've ever tried to build something diagonal before. So the idea that we had was just to make it very, very simple, because if you look from above, it does look a bit odd. So the idea was to make them totally just incognito in the whole build, to have the focus on the real good stuff of this transformation. So we pasted in another tower on top of the other ice cream cone. I guess that's what they're going to be called now, since that's what they look like. I'm not entirely sure what we could name each bit, the towers and the ice cream cones. On this one, since it's a bit smaller, instead of making it an ice cream cone, we decided to add a hanging garden. Now, if you look underneath, you can see me trying to do all sorts of different designs and failing quite miserably, until eventually I gave up and just created an upside down sphere and basically mimicked the exact same roof that I did on the other ones, just reversed underneath. And then of course we decided to detail all of the other roofs and then start adding another sphere set on top. And the reason is obviously that this one is a bit smaller, so we had to remake the sphere to make it correct. However, I updated the blocks, and then all of the purple concrete powder fell through and ruined my nice sphere, and there was no undoing it. I had to repair it all by hand. So that was just a bit of a moment in the build, but we got there in the end. We added the bridge to connect these two things up. Again, it's so awkward trying to fit those bridges in those really odd spaces at diagonals. We then decided to paste just a small segment of the tower on top of this one. Since it is that much smaller, we didn't want to have this over-dominating tower on it. It's always good on this end city transformation to have a bit of discrepancies between each one of the segments. The bridge, of course, we decided to just keep the same. We added a bit of lighting using sea lanterns and some trap doors. The trapdoor is the only bit of wood on this entire build. The hanging gardens add a bit of colour and a bit of green. You can see that we only use the purple and the white flowers. So you can see now we've got 3 complete segments and no complete segments at the back, and you can tell the massive difference. However, you can tell also that it was exactly how it used to be before we transformed it. Because most of these segments were the same as what we've already created, copying and pasting them was fairly easy to make sure that everything was quite consistent. And it meant that we didn't have to build it all by hand. If we had to do that, this build would have taken maybe 3 times as long, and it took us 3.5 hours as it was, so we're talking like 9 hours of building straight. This bridge in between these 2 main parts of the build was particularly strange in the vanilla generation, so we decided to just create a very steadily declining bridge that linked the 2 up, and detailing it very lightly, adding a bit more light, much like we did before. I'm not sure what the generation does to produce these weird end cities, but it does make it difficult for us that like to transform these builds. And the final segment of our main structure is going to be another hanging garden, but because it's just one segment, I want to keep that as it is, but then add some more stuff onto it. I wanted to make this bit just a little bit different. The only problem is I feel like it might have stood out a little bit. I even tried to mimic the same roof on top of it with the spheres, but ended up just shaving it off and putting it down to a very steady flat roof, while Happy Jellyfish, who helped me make this build today, was doing the gardens on it. The gardens add such a nice element. Those flowers, obviously because they match the palette, fit so nicely, and the green adds that extra bit of colour that the build desperately needs. So to finish off the last little bit on here, we added a final bridge linking up this garden to the main structure. of course trying to maintain where it was before. And now the main end city itself is complete, and oh my goodness, I really love this one. This is probably my favorite transformation to date, and I would love for those of you that have been on the channel for a while to comment down below and tell me what you think. Or maybe I'm tooting my own horn too much, but we're not done. We still have to finish the boat. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, and this is obviously where you find the elytra, and it does look pretty cool. You know, for vanilla generation, it's not too bad, but there's obviously some improvements that we can make. And mostly it's to the shape of the boat itself. Now you might expect us to put some sails on, but I've got a different idea in mind which we'll get to later on. The main thing is to shave off the bit at the bottom to try and add a bit more curvature into this very rectangular looking boat. We then of course want to add a bit more end brick in here. It's entirely dominated by purple, and we tried a few different ideas before settling on something in the end. So we decided to sort of chip out all of that middle segment and add some end brick behind it with a bit of depth. However, Happy Jellyfish wasn't quite satisfied and wanted to edit it a little bit, so I decided to work on the back of the boat, and we are only working on the side that you see now because we're going to use World Edit, of course, to flip it over to the other side and save us a whole bunch of time, as you can see. So now, instead of making some sails, I decided to turn this into an airship. I feel like it fit the whole thing a lot better than having a Peter Pan style floating boat. We decided to add some fins on the bottom, a giant air balloon above the ship connected by 2 masts instead of just 1, and it just ended up looking really nice, especially once we got everything. Obviously it just looks like a purple pill up the top at the moment, but with a little bit of work and a bit more adding of shape and some fins and that kind of thing, and a bit more supports, just having those 2 pillars holding it up didn't look quite right. It starts to really take shape so that the focus is less on the boat, more on the overall picture. I even added some fins at the back with a bit of fabric in between them, and it ended up coming out really, really nicely. I am surprised actually, because we did this on a total whim. We didn't plan this. Usually when we make these builds, we kind of come up with some basic ideas before we start. Then, to try and make it less dominated by pure purple, we added some magenta in there as well to try and break it up, and it looks like a bit of fabric draped over the top. With all of those fins and little steering things at the back, it looks absolutely fantastic. I really have enjoyed making this transformation. It is definitely one of my favorite ones to date. It's got this awesome looking roof, it's got a very dominating feature, and the palette is phenomenal. I never thought I would have made something made of predominantly yellow and purple in my life. It works really well, and it's so grand in the end itself. But that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very, very much for watching. I would love to hear what you think in the comments compared to some of my old builds, and a big thank you to Happy Jellyfish there, who was the one that helped me put together this time-lapse. And thank you to her for her, 3.5 hours of building straight with me, and she was the one that made sure that the boat got finished, because at the end I was like, I don't want to do it. But we made it to the end, and I'm very happy with the result. If you undertake a task like this and you want to make the end city transformation, I do recommend, 1, doing it in creative. Doing this in survival would be insane. It would take hundreds of hours. And I also recommend doing it in a group if you're going to undertake it. Or even better, come up with your own design for an end city and show me what you made. Lots of people love transforming these kind of builds, and I must admit, the appeal is great, because you can come up with some stuff that perhaps you would have never made on your own. I definitely wouldn't have made something like this if it wasn't for the original end city to transform. However, the shulkers and the endermen make it almost impossible for you to do this in survival. It was a massive pain, and they were just, pimpling all over the end city as it were, and we were all in creative. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, leave a comment down below, leave a like on the video if you want to see some more transformations, and goodbye.